Welcome everyone to our training on Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. This is a 4-part training series covering the upgrade from Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. My name is Brian Nice. I am a Principal Program Manager within our Teams Engineering, Customer, and Partner team. Before we dive in, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. Some additional resources include additional modules that can be found at aka.ms/Teams Academy. Additionally, we're looking for 2 types of feedback. For feedback on this session, you can go to aka.ms/Teams Community, create a new post, and add the IT Pro training tag. This will allow us to easily find your feedback for this session. If you're looking to provide feedback for various features of the Teams product itself, you can go to aka.ms/Teams Feedback. Keep in mind that Teams and Office 365 evolve constantly, so you should stay up to date on our blog at aka.ms/Teams blog. The slide also indicates the current version of this presentation. You are currently in part 4, configuring the upgrade, the IT admin point of view. In this training, we're going to cover configure the upgrade from the admin's point of view. Now, the 4 previous agenda points that you see here were covered in prior trainings that we did on the Skype to Teams upgrade. Some key learnings for this particular section. Admins have the capability of self-serving, either through their own IT admin or through a partner administrator, or they could take advantage of the Microsoft facilitated upgrade process to drive the upgrade from Skype to Microsoft Teams. The coexistence modes that are used to control the upgrade experience can be assigned through either the Modern Portal or the Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center or PowerShell. And these modes are able to be assigned either per user or tenant-wide. Now let's look at configuring the upgrade. A quick recap on the mechanics of the upgrade. To upgrade a user means to assign the Teams upgrade policy of Teams only to this particular user. Now that particular user must already have their account in Skype for Business Online. It is not possible to assign a Teams upgrade policy of Teams only mode to a user that has their Skype for Business account on premises. What changes when we assign this coexistence mode? Well, the routing of all of their calls and chats will go to Teams, regardless of where it was initiated. The Skype for Business client is optimized to a meetings only mode. Your meeting scheduling now moves to Teams. So in Outlook, for example, your Teams add-in gets enabled. So all new meetings that you create are Teams meetings, and your Skype for Business add-in gets disabled. Your presence becomes made available to Skype for Business users as controlled by Teams. So when you're in Teams only mode, Teams is the owner of presence. Contact migration gets triggered at your next Teams logon. This is to ensure that we capture any changes from your Skype for Business buddy list and import them into Teams. The Outlook people cards will then be updated to invoke Teams functionality for chat, calling, and presence. This includes the presence bubbles that you would see throughout your Office applications. And your HID preferences, your human interface device preferences. That's, for example, your headset and being able to click the mute button or the hang up button, things of that nature. Your HID preferences for inputs on your audio devices will be updated to reflect Teams as the primary application. From a data migration standpoint, your contacts are copied into Teams in 2 phases. The very first time you log into Teams, your contacts are copied from Skype for Business Online into Teams. At the next Teams logon, after you have been fully upgraded, meaning you've had the Teams only coexistence mode applied, your contacts are copied again to Teams and merged with any existing contacts that you have. Now, a couple of caveats and implications for users that are homed in Skype for Business on premises. Your contacts are moved to Skype for Business Online as part of the move-cs user commandlet. That's a typical commandlet that you would use to move a user from Skype for Business on premises into Skype for Business Online. When you do that, the contacts are moved to online, and once they're in online, the above logic that we mentioned earlier is relied upon. Your Skype for Business contacts will not be available in Teams until the user has been upgraded to Teams only mode. Now, from a meetings perspective, if you are upgrading the user from Skype for Business Online, the meetings are not migrated as a result of you assigning this coexistence mode. Now, we are currently working on a client-side version that will allow meetings to be converted from Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. And as of the time of this recording, it was still being worked through in our dog food channels, but should be made readily available soon. We also did a demo of this at Ignite 2018. If you are upgrading from Skype for Business on premises, we will migrate your meetings. Now, this will be part of an upcoming cumulative update to Skype for Business Server 2015, as well as part of Skype for Business Server 2019. This will allow us to facilitate a single step migration or upgrade from on-premises Skype for Business straight into Teams, including the migration of your meetings. Now, when we look at on-premises orgs, we need to have a couple of things to keep in mind. First and foremost, enabling Skype for Business Hybrid is required to start moving to Teams only. Now, that hybrid involves configuring the split domain between your on-premises Skype deployment and your Office 365 tenant. But it also includes ensuring that as you synchronize your on-premises directory to Azure Active Directory, that you also synchronize all of the MSRTC SIP attributes from the on-premises environment to Azure Active Directory. This is to ensure that the Office 365 environment, and specifically Teams, understands that there is in fact an on-premises Skype for Business deployment there. If you don't synchronize those attributes, Teams doesn't realize that there's an on-premises Skype for Business org. And if you then go and enable a user for Teams, we might inadvertently create a new shadow Skype for Business Online account for them without realizing that you already had one created for them in the on-premises world. So you absolutely need to make sure that your synchronization is working properly and that you are synchronizing the MSRTC SIP attributes as well. Couple of other caveats. If a user has their Skype for Business account on premises, you can give them Teams, assuming, of course, you've done the correct sync that we just mentioned, right? But they cannot be fully upgraded, meaning they can't have the Teams only mode assigned to them. We will enforce that via the grant CS Teams upgrade policy commandlet. If you try to do it, we'll tell you you can't, right? They will not have the ability to do interop nor federation from their Teams client. They would have to use their Skype for Business client. You can look at our previous training that we did on coexistence and interoperability for the gory details around that particular line item. To fully upgrade the user to Teams, the on-prem user must first be moved to Skype for Business Online in order to properly grant them the Teams-only coexistence mode. Now, you can do that one of two ways. You can do that through the one-step process that we mentioned here, which this is part of the upcoming cumulative update to Skype for Business Server 2015 or Server 2019. And we've added the -move to Teams switch to the move CS user commandlet. So you can simply run this one command and we'll do it all for you in one shot. We'll move the account from on-prem to online, migrate all the relevant data to online, and then apply the Teams upgrade policy of Teams only mode to the user all in that one commandlet. Now, you also have the capability of doing it in 2 steps, which allows you to use basically any version of Move CS User. So if you haven't gotten the cumulative update yet, for example, or perhaps you're running Link Server 2013, you could move CS User to simply move the user from on-premises Skype for Business to online Skype for Business, and then go ahead and run the grant CS Teams upgrade policy commandlet to assign them the Teams only mode. The end results are basically the same with the exception of meeting migration, right? meeting migration would happen as part of the one-step migration once we enable that functionality. The two-step migration, you would have to rely on the client-side conversion mechanism to be able to convert those meetings from Skype for Business meetings to Teams meetings. They would not be moved automatically as part of the two-step migration. Now, as we look at the upgrade itself from an IT perspective, there's really two options that we have from an upgrade track. There's the customer-driven track where the customer decides that they are ready to go to Teams. They determine the time frame and all the goodness that's around that, and then the customer and/or the partner actually turns the levers and pulls the nerd knobs and so forth that allow the upgrade to happen. The other option is what we call the Microsoft facilitated automated upgrade process, where it's an advantage in a service that Microsoft can offer, where Microsoft will do the upgrade process for you. The key difference here is how the migration itself is initiated, right? The end user experience, the underlying core mechanics, all the pieces we've talked about up to this point are essentially the same. Really, the only difference is how the migration gets initiated, whether it's the customer or the partner that pulls the levers, or whether it's Microsoft. From the customer perspective, obviously the target here is the larger online organizations, maybe folks that have dedicated Skype admins, any organizations that are on premises or have hybrid, right? That's really where customer-driven comes into play. The IT admin or the partner can initiate the upgrade using the tools in our Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center or PowerShell. This is available to any organization. The IT admin or the partner can selectively upgrade the users at whatever pace works for them. And of course, you can choose to downgrade at any time. If you go ahead and assign a user Teams only mode and you're like, oh, we're not ready to do that yet, you can just assign them a different mode to essentially roll them back from the Teams only mode perspective. You would, of course, want to take advantage of all of the various planning mechanisms that we've talked about in our previous trainings that are part of this series on Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. The Microsoft facilitated automated upgrade is intended for customers that have limited or no IT resources. This is exclusively for pure online organizations. So if you have an on-premises or a hybrid deployment, this is not a service that's available and not an option for you. The intent here is, in these select cases, Microsoft can automatically upgrade the entire Office 365 tenant. Advance notice is given out to administrators via message center, via email, as well as via the admin UI, with subsequent periodic reminders. The intent here is that this is something that will occur for smaller organizations, typically under 500 seats in size, that have been deemed eligible for this upgrade process. And the eligibility is determined by engineering using a number of factors, not just simply the size of the organization, but also the types of features and functions that we currently have available in Teams compared to the usage of various features and functions in Skype for Business Online. Admins would have the ability to defer once prior to the upgrade. Customers should be providing notice to their end users once these notifications come out, just to give a little bit of a heads up that something is happening, something is changing, right? When this upgrade does occur, the entire tenant is upgraded all in one shot. Now, prior to the determined upgrade date, if there happens to be an IT admin in place or a partner admin in place, of course, they could use features of the customer-driven, IT admin-driven track to self-migrate. You could make this available and do the upgrade however you see fit prior to the upgrade date. If for some reason the organization completes their upgrade, but there's a challenge or some type of deficiency, the organization can request to be downgraded by Microsoft support. This slide shows a summary of the tracks that we looked at, the customer-driven versus the Microsoft facilitated, and a little bit of a breakdown between the items that we've covered on the previous detailed slides. Now let's look at the admin experience itself inside of the Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center as well as PowerShell. Setting the coexistence mode can be achieved through the Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Admin Center. As you can see in my screenshot here, I've navigated on the left side under my org-wide settings and selected the Teams upgrade option. Here you can see in the drop-down the various coexistence modes that are available. Now, a couple of things to realize here. First and foremost, this is an organization-wide setting. So the coexistence mode that you choose in this particular screen will apply to your entire organization. Second thing to note, in my screenshot here, if you've been paying attention to some of the previous recordings, you're probably going, hey, Brian, you're missing a few there. I only see 3 of the coexistence modes, and I thought you had 5. Spot on. We are currently looking to light up the additional coexistence modes over the next quarter or so. So keep your eyes out for those to be available inside of this modern portal experience. But as you can see here, I can pick and choose a particular mode that I so desire, and this will affect the entire organization. Also, if you recall from our earlier trainings where we were looking at the client experience, there is an opportunity to turn on a notification banner in the user's Skype for Business client, a little purple banner that indicates that the upgrade is coming. That is represented by the little toggle switch that you see here. So for example, I have selected the coexistence mode of islands for my entire organization, and at a time deemed applicable for me and my organization, I have now toggled this notify Skype for Business users that an upgrade to Teams is available option to on. This will trigger the Skype for Business client to show the respective purple banner in the Skype for Business client itself. This also triggers the download of the client in the background so that if the user were to happen to click on the try it option, once this banner appears, the Teams client would actually be available. Now, when we're ready to perform an upgrade at the organization level, we can simply come into our Teams and Skype for Business Admin Center, navigate under org-wide settings to Teams upgrade, and where you see the coexistence mode, simply go to the drop-down and select Teams only. When I click Save here, I'm going to get an attestation dialog that's letting me know that at this stage, you are assigning the Teams only coexistence mode to your entire organization. This will upgrade your entire organization to Teams. They will no longer be able to use Skype for Business except in the optimized meetings mode. So just to be sure that you're aware, you need to make sure you tick this checkbox to understand the effect of the change and save to apply. Now, in addition to setting this at the organization level, you can also set these coexistence modes at an individual user level. The individual user level setting will, of course, override whatever you have set at the organization-wide level. So to do this, first, on the left-hand side, I go to my users blade, which I have highlighted with number 1 here. Then I would select a particular user, which I don't actually have on the screen here, but I would select a particular user. Once I've selected that user, as we see here, I would go to step 2 under Teams Upgrade and click on Edit. That will bring up the dialog box that you see over here on the right, which allows me to pick and choose the coexistence mode that I would like to set for this individual user. So this is a great way if you're running a pilot for you to go ahead and select an individual set of users and apply the Teams only mode to this individual user. That way the individual user setting would override the setting that you have at the organization, allowing you to get a more tailored experience for that pilot group of users. As we saw earlier in the org-wide settings, if I wanted to turn on notifications for an individual user, I can do that as well. As I navigate down and select the coexistence mode, in this case, I've selected the islands coexistence mode, you'll see underneath the same toggle that you saw in the org-wide setting, which allows me to notify the Skype for Business user. Toggling this, of course, will turn on the banner in the Skype for Business client for this individual user. This slide shows a reference for the PowerShell commandlets that you would use to assign the various modes to an individual user. Now, a couple things to note here. You're probably looking at this chart and counting and going, Brian, you did it again. There's like, I thought there were only 5 modes. Why do I see more than 5 options here? And the reason you see that is because for us to be able to assign a mode with notify, that actually is a separate PowerShell commandlet. So like what you saw in the modern portal screenshots, there was a little toggle for you to turn on the notification option. That's actually a separate PowerShell commandlet that we run to enable the notify setting. So for example, we see here for islands, if I want to turn on islands for a particular user, there's my commandlet, grant CS teams upgrade policy. The policy name is islands. And in this case, the identity I did was $SIP address. So that's a variable, of course, that holds the particular SIP address of the user that I want to assign this for. If I wanted to set this org-wide, by the way, you'd just leave off the identity piece, right? And that would just set it to the entire org. If I wanted to set islands, but then toggle the notification so that the banner appears in the Skype client, I would grant the policy name of islands with notify. And that sets the coexistence mode to islands for the user and also turns on the notify flag, which will then light up the banner in the Skype for Business client. You can see all the rest of these, right? It's the mode, but then there's a with notify. With Teams collab with notify. Collab and meetings with notify. So that's really the difference between the two. And then the one right in the middle, the policy name upgrade to Teams, that is Teams only mode. Now, one last item to note here. In the Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center, islands, the notification options for islands, the Skype for Business only mode with notify, those are all currently available. The Teams only mode is currently rolling out into the Ring 4, which is our production ring, and is expected to complete this quarter. So if you don't see that in your Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center, you can still assign that through PowerShell if you so desire. The remaining modes are due to light up over the coming quarters in the Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center. Now, you can apply any of these modes with PowerShell, but realize, as we saw in our earlier deep dive on the various coexistence modes, that some of these modes, well, all of the modes that we have listed here with the SfB star in front are available from a routing perspective, but they don't yet take away the corresponding features in the Teams client. We're waiting on the apps permission policy for that to light up, and that should be lighting up here in the next coming quarter. Let's recap our key learnings from this training. Administrators can self-serve the upgrade process or take advantage of the Microsoft facilitated upgrade process if certain conditions apply. The coexistence modes can be assigned through either the modern portal, also known as the Skype for Business and Teams Admin Center, or through PowerShell. And these coexistence modes can be applied on a per user basis or tenant-wide. Be sure to check out the other trainings that are part of this series of the Skype to Teams upgrade. Thank you for attending this session.